Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, November the 13th. We have more tropical activity to talk about. Looks like potentially another hurricane threat for Florida in about a week's time. That system may move then to the north and east and usher in a colder air mass on its backside. Oftentimes this time of the year, and I've talked about this occasionally on videos, the last hurricane of the tropical season pushes off to the north and east and ushers in a colder air mass, sometimes a pattern changing type of influx of colder air. And indeed, it looks like we'll have to deal with this tropical system again, likely in and around the state of Florida in about a week's time, and then quite an impressive shot of cold air or two during the second half of November across the central and eastern states. This is where the system exists right now, still quite warm waters over the Caribbean Sea. It looks like it'll kind of drift over the next few days and ultimately could cross over the Yucatan Peninsula and then start to make that turn in about a week's time or so and likely heads towards the Gulf Coast of Florida, maybe next Wednesday, a week from right now. Still plenty of time to monitor this system, but again, a potential hurricane could impact Florida in about a week's time. We'll see if there's any changes over the next few days. Now, after that, it would likely move to the north and east, perhaps off the coast completely, but colder air will start to pour in on its backside. Again, oftentimes at the end of the tropical season in the Atlantic Basin, that last system or two ushers in a colder air mass that really is kind of a pattern changing change to cold in the central and eastern states. And again, quite an impressive look to some cold air shots during the second half of November into the central and northeastern part of the nation. Well, let's take a look at a teleconnection index known as the North Atlantic Oscillation. We looked at this on Monday, and we mentioned that it drops from positive territory into negative territory. And all the red here, it indicates the forecast, the black, the observed NAO. And again, it drops into negative territory, stays in negative territory throughout much of the second half of November, as indicated right here. When the NAO and its closely related cousin, the AO, drop into negative territory during the winter season, that usually is associated with high latitude blocking, higher heights, higher pressures than normal up across Canada, Greenland, maybe Iceland. That in turn favors the influx of colder air masses from Canada into the central and eastern U.S. So this is kind of giving us a signal that things could turn colder for the central and eastern U.S. during the second half of November. Indeed, the forecast maps indicate such a thing as well. Well, let's take a look at last night's 0Z run of the GFS. This is the conventional version of the GFS model. Again, it's 0Z. First, we're looking at a North America view of the 500 millibar height anomalies. The first thing that jumps out at you, you see some purples here. That's much, much higher than normal heights or pressures already showing up here over east of Greenland near Iceland here as we begin the day here on Wednesday. Strong upper level ridge also situated over the Hudson Bay region of Canada this morning. Now, let's move forward here in time. And this ridge slides on into the southeastern part of Canada and starts to intensify. And here we see in about 4 or 5 days or so over the upcoming weekend, starting to show up here over northern Canada and Greenland here with purples. Again, that's kind of off the scales here compared to normal in terms of the 500 millibar heights. Notice also ridging extending down across the Great Lakes, and here is a reflection of that tropical system here at 500 millibars during the early part of the upcoming weekend. Then we move forward in time, and again, this system could end up moving over the Yucatan Peninsula region of Mexico later in the weekend or early part of next week before taking a turn to the north and east here towards the state of Florida. Again, that's still a week away, so things could change here. But look at this pattern by the time we get out about a week from right now. This is what you call high latitude blocking, not necessarily going to sit around for a long time, but very intense high pressure ridging here over northern Canada and Greenland, and it's kind of correlated with a strong upper level trough over the Great Lakes. And indeed, there'll be some very cold air relative to normal for this time of the year moving into the central U.S. and eventually making its way into the eastern U.S. And here is potentially a hurricane impacting Florida in about a week's time here. And again, that moves off to the north and east, and on its backside, that influx of colder air. Hurricane Sandy, by the way, had a kind of a similar impact. That was the very end of October in 2012. It, of course, moved all the way up the coast and impacted the mid-Atlantic region. On its backside, much, much colder air than normal flooded into the mid-Atlantic region. In fact, there were 3 feet of snow in West Virginia associated with Hurricane Sandy. It was kind of a pattern-changing end to the tropical season, bringing in colder air into the eastern states. So we go out a little farther in time, and this is quite an impressive upper-level trough here sitting in the eastern states. This is a Thursday now, November 21st. That's a week from tomorrow. This is a kind of a winter-like look to it with this high latitude blocking here, off the charts type pressures and heights in this part of Canada and Greenland with this deep, deep upper level trough. That hurricane moved off to the north and east, kind of gets absorbed into that upper level trough. Go a little bit farther in time, and this trough basically is replaced by another one right here as we get into the weekend before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is late this year, the last Thursday in the month of November. We still have that high latitude blocking excuse me, over Greenland and northern Canada in about a week and a half's time, with a strong upper level trough over southern Canada, the northern U.S. Now, how does all this reflect at the 850 millibar level in terms of temperature anomalies? Well, we have a lot of warmer than normal conditions right now, beginning the day here on Wednesday in the southern part of Canada, the Great Lakes region, cold in the Mid-Atlantic region. Some of the lowest temperatures of the season so far greet this Monday morning. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, suburban locations in the upper 20s to lower 30s. Again, cold again late tonight in that same I-95 corridor region. Now, we'll move forward here and just kind of keep an eye on some of these cold air outbreaks here. Again, we're looking at the North America view into the upcoming weekend. A lot of warmer than normal conditions associated with those higher heights than normal, the high latitude blocking over Canada. But on its backside, a lot of colder than normal conditions here across western Canada, Alaska, and that first infiltrates the western U.S. right here. We see this right here a week from right now. This is next Wednesday, and again, this is kind of a reflection in the temperature pattern here of that tropical system as perhaps it heads towards Florida and then off to the north and east. And on its backside, cold air shot moves into the central and eastern states, and that's not going to be the end of that cold air intrusion here, that pattern changing type of ending tropical system. Here we go into Thanksgiving week here. This is all the way out to Monday, November 25th, and you have a very impressive cold air shot. Now, this is way out there in speculation phase with respect to the GFS model here, but this is quite an impressive and believable pattern here, by the way, into Thanksgiving week. This is the day before Thanksgiving here. Warmer than normal conditions associated with that high latitude blocking, but colder than normal underneath, associated with that upper level trough over the middle and eastern part of the nation. So first hurricane, and then kind of a pattern changing event to colder weather across much of the central and eastern U.S. for much of the second half of November. Now let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps. Just a very strong high pressure system centered over the southeastern part of Canada, controlling the weather all the way down into the southeastern states. Again, a very chilly morning here in the Mid-Atlantic region with some of the lowest temperatures so far, upper 20s. Frederick, Maryland, for example, was 26 degrees earlier this morning, down to the upper 20s in some of the northwest suburbs of Philly. Now, we do have a frontal system headed towards the Mid-Atlantic region with an associated weak low-pressure area. Now, the best chance of showers later tomorrow, into tomorrow night, will certainly be south of the Mason-Dixon line. It looks like a place like D.C., Delmarva Peninsula, and much less of a chance up across Philadelphia to New York City. Maybe a shower or two, but again, the steadiest shower activity late tomorrow night will occur south of the Mason-Dixon line, D.C., down to Delmarva and the eastern part of the Carolinas. That moves off the coast, and it sets us up for another, I would say, 3-day stretch of dry and cool conditions in the Mid-Atlantic region for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then we'll go out farther in time. Now, this is going into next week, and we'll start to see this particular model run and that tropical system again showing up here about 6 days from now, next Tuesday, across the Yucatan Peninsula region of Mexico. We also have that reflection here at the surface of that vigorous upper level trough moving into the center part of the nation. And remember, high latitude blocking to its north. And here comes that system headed towards southern or central part of Florida in a week's time. This next Wednesday, the 20th, and it cuts across Florida, moves northeast out to the western Atlantic, and here comes that influx of colder air on its backside, pouring in on the backside towards the end of next week. And again, there'll be certainly a follow-up cold air intrusion from Canada into the central and eastern U.S. going into Thanksgiving week. So quite an interesting weather pattern, especially next week and beyond into the end of the month of November. First, we have to deal with perhaps, just perhaps, the last of the tropical systems in the Atlantic Basin, and then a couple of impressive cold shots for the central and eastern states latter part of November. That's it for now. For Arcfieldweather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.